Claudia Banton. Claudia Banton was 42 years old in August of 2021 when she was arrested for murder. Claudia was apprehended in Florida, 1,000 miles away from where she killed Delia Johnson in cold blood. The killing was horrific. Delia was standing in a street in Brooklyn, having a conversation with a couple of friends. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, Claudia walked up, put a gun to Delia's head, and pulled the trigger. It was an execution-style killing without a shred of remorse. The whole thing was also caught on camera, with Claudia clearly seen approaching the victim and pulling out her weapon. Claudia was no stranger to serious crime. She had previously served 7 years in a prison in Georgia for various felony convictions, including forgery. She also served some time in New Jersey before the fatal shooting. Claudia was arrested as a juvenile in 1993, then had 2 forgery arrests in 2005 and 2006. In both cases, she used aliases that weren't very good. Her aliases were Claudia Williams and Claudia Johnson. She kept using her real first name as part of her fake name. What's really shocking is that just minutes after the murder, she was questioned and released by police. Right after the execution, Claudia was pulled over by the cops. But because the officers hadn't found the footage yet, and because they assumed the murderer was a man, they let her go. Claudia managed to flee another 1,000 miles before the police caught up to her again. After seeing the footage, the victim's mother, Delia Berry, was appalled that she recognized the assassin. Claudia had been a family friend, someone who joined family events and swung around during the holidays. But in the weeks prior to the murder, Claudia and Delia had been getting into arguments. It's still not clear what led Claudia to take such drastic measures by committing murder, but it looks like it was all over petty squabbles. After her arrest in Florida, Claudia was extradited back to New York to face her murder charge. Fight to the death. Amy Anita Joyner Francis was 16 years old on the morning of April 21, 2016. She was a student at Howard High School of Technology in Wilmington, Delaware. She went to school that morning not realizing it would be her last day on this planet. She walked into the school bathroom and was confronted by 3 female students. Trinity Carr, Zion Snow, and Shakira Wright attacked Amy over a dispute they were having about a boy. Trinity was the one who initiated the violence by punching Amy in the face. With the violence started, a group of female students in the bathroom pulled out their phones and started recording. Nobody tried to stop the fight, they just videotaped it. Trinity ripped Amy's fingernails out and smashed her head into the sink of the handicap stall. When she fell to the ground, Zion Snow started kicking her. At this point, the fight had gone beyond an ordinary high school brawl, and now spectators did try to stop it. Even one of the girls who first cornered Amy, Shakira Wright, tried to pull Trinity off the bleeding girl, but it was too late. Amy lost consciousness on the floor of the high school bathroom. She was flown by a state police helicopter to the hospital, but unfortunately was pronounced dead. The autopsy ruled her death a homicide. She died from a cardiac arrest, which was caused by blunt force trauma. Thanks to the videos taken by the students, there was no disputing what happened. Trinity Carr was charged with negligent homicide and found guilty. She was sentenced to 6 months in rehabilitation service and 500 hours of community service. But then she had the conviction overturned, resulting in essentially no punishment for committing a murder. And now for number 7. But first, it's shout-out time. I wanted to give a big thank you to RS Don Call 7598 and Deborah Lerman 5957 for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Crossbow Cannibal. Stephen Griffiths is the Crossbow Cannibal, an ex-criminology PhD student whose obsession with murder led him to a spree of killings. When Griffiths was a young man, he became obsessed with John George Hay, also known as the acid bath murderer. He killed 6 people and was hanged for his crimes in 1949. Decades later, Griffiths decided to pursue his own evil string of murders. He killed, dismembered, and partially cannibalized 3 women in England. He became known as the Crossbow Cannibal because he hunted his victims with an actual crossbow. Stephen's killing spree wouldn't last very long. It took less than a year after his first murder for him to be arrested. He was caught on a surveillance camera dragging the body of his last victim into his apartment after she had nearly escaped. It was a chilling piece of evidence that brought Stephen's demented rampage to an end. Stephen was known as the Lizard Man to his neighbors. The other people in his apartment complex thought he was a little strange because he took his lizards on leashed walks. He strolled around with slicked back hair and sunglasses plus a creepy long coat. It might have been innocent enough if not for his weirdly aggressive behavior towards his female neighbors. The people in his apartment complex collected information on him and gave it to the police as they feared he might be dangerous. It turned out they were right. His first victim was Susan Rushworth, a sex worker in her 40s. In June 2009, she took a bus to Stephen's town of Bradford, then vanished. In April 2010, Shelley Armitage, another sex worker, disappeared after going out to work one night. Griffiths filmed himself dismembering Shelley on his cell phone, then disposed of her remains using public transport. This guy took bags of body parts on a public bus and threw them in the river. Then he lost his phone on a train with the disturbing footage on it. Somebody found the phone and the footage and took it to the police, but the cops weren't quick enough to stop Stephen from killing his third victim, Suzanne Blamires, in May 2010. Stephen kidnapped Suzanne and held her in his apartment. She managed to escape, fleeing the apartment, only to be captured and knocked unconscious. Stephen left her in the hallway while he went back to his apartment and got his crossbow. He came back and shot an arrow through her head. Then he dragged Suzanne back to his apartment, with all of this recorded on the security system. Stephen even realized he was on film and flipped off the camera. Imagine the horror of the complex caretaker when he came in Monday morning and looked through the weekend footage. There was one of the tenants killing someone with a crossbow. Stephen was promptly arrested. In an interview, he told police he would have continued killing if they hadn't caught him. As you can imagine, he was given life in prison. Dharmas Polaroids. Jeffrey Dahmer never captured any of his killings on video, but he did take some very disturbing photographs. Jeffrey Dahmer was never going to get away with what he did to his victims, seeing as the police found a human head in his fridge. But even if he had cleaned his apartment and gotten rid of the body parts, his Polaroids would have been enough proof to put him away forever. Between 1978 and 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered and mutilated 17 victims. One of Jeffrey's attempted murders was a man named Tracy Edwards. He was the proverbial one who got away. He managed to slip out of Jeffrey Dahmer's cruel grasp and flagged down the cops as he ran for his life. Officers Rolf Mueller and Robert Roth listened to Tracy's story about a freak who had been inches away from killing him. They agreed to visit Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment at the behest of Tracy, who was adamant there was something seriously sick going on inside. When the two officers knocked on the door, Jeffrey greeted them, but so did the stench of death. The putrefying scent of rotting meat wafted out of Dahmer's apartment. Dahmer tried to explain that it was pork gone bad because his freezer had turned off. It wasn't human meat, of course not. Shockingly, the cops believed everything he told them. They were prepared to walk out of that apartment and let Dahmer continue to kill. The only thing that stopped the cops was the fact that his intended victim, Tracy Edwards, was handcuffed. They asked Jeffrey if he could give them the key, which led officers to an open drawer in his bedroom. When one of the officers looked into the drawer, they found a stash of Polaroids. If it hadn't been for those Polaroids, who knows how many more people would have died. The cops had 80 Polaroid images of his victims in various states in their hands. These Polaroids showed Jeffrey doing horrendous things to the bodies, along with some other pretty nasty stuff I can't even repeat. It was that collection of pictures, or what you might call mementos, that ended Jeffrey's killing spree. Gunned down in Harlem. A visit to a smoke shop in Harlem turned deadly in the spring of 2023. At about 8 on a Sunday evening, the smoke shop on the corner of 125th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard was crowded. Surveillance footage from within the shop showed 9 people standing around, chatting and hanging out. Then a man in a tan jacket walked into the shop, presumably to purchase something. A man in the footage wearing a dark jacket exchanged some words with the newcomer. The tan jacket man turned to walk away from the counter, looking obviously uncomfortable. As he turned to leave, the man in the dark jacket pulled out a gun and shot him. The gunshot caused absolute chaos. Everybody ran out of the shop except for the shooter. He started to slowly leave, then stopped. He pointed the gun at the victim, who may have survived the initial shot. Then the killer pulled the trigger again, making sure the man in the tan jacket wasn't getting up. The murderer wasn't done with his victim yet, though. He left, but seconds later reappeared to rummage through the victim's pockets. It was an extremely brazen public killing and robbery, all caught on tape with the killer's face clear as day. He was later identified as Messiah Nantwe. The killing at the smoke shop was his second murder within 30 hours. According to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, Nantwe shot and murdered Jalen Duncan in a very similar fashion 27 hours before the incident at the smoke shop. He shot him once at close range, then stood over the defenseless man and shot him several more times. Prior to the two killings, Nantwe had gotten into a firefight with the cops. He opened fire on NYPD officers who returned 31 shots of their own. He was hit several times but survived, then shockingly made bail. He shot at the cops and was still allowed free, which resulted in the killings of Brandon Brunson at the smoke shop and Jalen Duncan. Do you think Messiah Nantwe would have been caught if not for the security camera? Let me know what you think in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Beaten in India. Police in India arrested 4 men in 2011 after they were caught on a traffic camera beating a man to death in the middle of the street. Senior police officials said the beating happened on a Sunday in Coimbatore, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu. The traffic footage showed a pair of men on a motorcycle and 2 men on foot suddenly attacked the victim, Santosh Kumar. Santosh was simply minding his own business, taking a stroll down the street. They dragged him to the side of the road and then dropped a giant rock on his head. As if the rock wasn't enough, the men kicked him multiple times and then ran away. The police investigation revealed that the attackers had gotten into a drunken altercation with the man earlier in the evening. It looks like the man left to continue on with his life, but the 4 men weren't done with them yet. They tracked him down and did away with him in the street, not realizing there was a camera strapped to the traffic signal. All 4 men were arrested and were set to be charged with murder. Execution in North Miami Beach. At around 1 in the morning on May 30th, 2023, there was a shooting in North Miami Beach. Marcus Ely and Mario Fogler, both in their early 20s, were caught on camera execution-style murdering 21-year-old Malcolm Avery Johnson Jr. According to the newly released arrest warrant, the brutal killing was over a chain that the victim was wearing. Surveillance footage of Northwest 170th Street and Northwest 3rd Avenue showed the victim walking casually down the street. He passed a black Nissan Maxima, which suddenly slammed on the brakes. The 2 gunmen then got out of the car and approached the victim with guns drawn. Marcus Ely snatched the chain from his neck, but Johnson didn't want to let it go. Marcus got sick of the struggle and pulled the trigger at close range, firing 4 shots into Johnson. He was later found dead from gunshots to both the head and chest. Near his body was the broken metal chain that the robbers had been so desperate to steal. After they killed Johnson, they didn't even bother to take the chain with them. Thanks to the video footage, the license plate was traced back to a woman who had rented the car. She told police the car had been stolen by 3 men she hung out with. She knew the name of one of them, which brought the cops to Marcus. The woman said that when she had contacted Marcus to give her the car back, he told her he was going to kill her. Now Marcus and Mario are both facing first-degree murder charges. Shot for no reason. Disturbing footage was captured in April 2023 of a man being gunned down mercilessly on a sidewalk in Queens. The victim, 23-year-old Javon Jeminson of North Lauderdale, was seen in the footage being chased down the street by a pair of gunmen. The 2 gunmen fired over a dozen shots as they chased Javon. They hit him enough times that he fell down bleeding on the sidewalk. Then they ran off and were gone. Although the victim was taken to Jamaica Hospital Medical Center, there was no saving him from his wounds. In April, an NYPD spokesman said the cops didn't know why the shooting happened. They said the victim was walking along and then became a random target of the 2 men. As far as the cops knew, Javon was shot for no reason. They had video footage, but it would take around 5 months for them to catch one of the suspects. They captured Christopher King on the run in Georgia on August 16th. He was extradited back to New York, where he was indicted for murder. But his accomplice is still at large. Which of these savage killings caught on tape shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you liked the video, and come back soon for more shocking stuff from the channel.